Focus on Headline. All right, let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our reporters in Yoon Se-young and Kim Min-ji. Guys, welcome back.
Hi. Oh, poor SJ. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
We're feeling better. It's good to see you back, but we all worried about you.
No, you guys were really excited Seoul was filling in.
No, not at all. So sad. I almost cried.
I quietly watched the chat boxes.
You did? You said you couldn't even get out of the bed.
Oh, I was in my bed looking at the chat boxes. I saw those messages, aka fans of SJ. All right, we'll see what happens.
Oopsie.
Backstabbers. No, all kidding aside.
Everything.
All kidding aside, big thank you to Seoul. It really was last minute. Called on for her assistance and she filled in real well.
She's super busy these days.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, looks like we're all going to be busy too. First and foremost, let's continue to talk about the tensions on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea spent the weekend alleging that a South Korean drone infiltrated at Pyongyang's airspace, escalating military tensions on the Korean Peninsula. It's interesting that they say this because it is, if I remember correctly, not too long ago, 2 years back, I believe it was, in December-ish of 2022, that North Korea had sent some spy drones over Seoul's airspace. But really, this situation right now raising concerns over the potential for further conflict potentially between the two Koreas here. Seong, start us off. Let's get the latest on this.
Yes, on this past Friday, North Korea state media issued a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The statement claims that South Korea launched drones on the nights of the 3rd, 9th, and 10th, distributing leaflets critical of the North Korean regime. And the leaflets reportedly contained blurred messages, though one slogan clearly read, Kim Jong-un obsessed with enriching himself. And the materials also included images of luxury items associated with the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, and his daughter, Kim Jue, highlighting the extravagance of the North Korean leadership, especially when considering the current economic situation in North Korea. And in response, North Korea has escalated its rhetoric, directing frontline artillery units to be on full combat alert. And the regime warned that any drone, regardless of its origin, would face immediate retaliation if it entered Pyongyang's airspace again.
Again, it is North Korea that had entered South Korean airspace first. Now, that wasn't an attack drone or anything like that. It was a spy drone. We don't know. Again, North Korea is alleging that South Korea has done this. As JCS has not confirmed whether or not this is true, but there seems to be some ambiguity around North Korea's accusations. Speaking of which, how credible are these claims, though?
Well, indeed, the accusations remain contentious. North Korea released thermal imaging footage and photos of the alleged leaflets attributing them to South Korea, but questions persist about the true origin and intent of the drone. For example, questions are being asked, was it genuinely sent by South Korea, and could it be a false flag operation orchestrated by North Korea? And there's also a possibility that civilian activist groups, such as those led by North Korean defectors in the South, were involved because this group actually caused the trash balloon incident. And another theory suggests that anti-regime factions within North Korea might have launched a drone themselves, but this is highly unlikely, experts say. And the South Korean Ministry of National Defense has taken a cautious stance, neither confirming nor denying the allegations, but still it warned that any threat to the safety of South Korean citizens would result in the end of the North Korean regime. Yet some experts argue that such ambiguity could backfire, urging Seoul to adopt a more transparent and fact-based approach to avoid international misunderstandings. Initially, Defense Minister Kim Yo-jong denied the drone infiltration altogether, but following an emergency meeting, he revised his position, saying the ministry could not verify the North's claims at this time.
So the weird thing with this drone, right? The distance between Seoul and Pyongyang is 193 kilometers. For you Americans, that's 120 miles. That's a long distance. Now, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say the drones were lifted off from the border area, right? And so you could maybe take out 30 kilometers or so, maybe a little bit more. And so even given the fact maybe about 160 to 150 kilometers distance from the DMZ to Pyongyang. That's a great deal of distance for you to control a drone. A typical drone that maybe the activists would have would not be able to reach that far. I don't think their radio remote control can actually be able to send a drone that far. The only thing that could happen is if it uses a military drone. That's a different story. Now, Seoul has so far has said that it's not going to confirm whether or not it is behind this. But still, nevertheless, it seems that North Korea is using this incident as part of a broader propaganda campaign against the South.
Yes, Pyongyang appears to be leveraging these accusations to stoke anti-South Korean sentiment among its people. This aligns with a shift in rhetoric from Kim Jong-un, who last December redefined inter-Korean relations as hostile state-to-state relations. Notably, during North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly on October 7th to the 8th, the regime amended its constitution, and reports indicate that any mention of unification was quietly omitted, different from what we've expected following Kim's earlier directive. And analysts are divided on whether these changes reflect the regime's caution in managing public backlash or if the omission was intentional but kept under wraps to avoid internal dissent. Either way, it suggests that North Korea is moving toward a more isolated stance while keeping the constitutional change hidden from its citizens, meaning from Pyongyang's perspective, it's necessary to create this hostile atmosphere against Seoul.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, so far what we've seen so far is these are things that North Korea would do. It was North Korea back in December, I believe, oh my goodness, I think it was December of 2022, if my memory serves me correct, that again, they sent spy drones over the Seoul airspace. And there was a whole controversy of whether or not they're going to shoot it down. And then the South Korean military at the time said if they try to shoot it down and they miss and things like that, it could cause damage to South Korean territory and things like that. So they decided not to do anything about it. But there was a clear incursion by the North. South Korea, before I know that, given the fact that they have mentioned how to go about spread information about the outside world to the North Koreans. They have mentioned this. But sending a drone over to Pyongyang is very dangerous. And I know that Seoul would probably avoid this. It is not the first time that North Korea has performed false flag operations in the past. And so all of this tells me that maybe it is North Korea's part of propaganda movement and trying to make an excuse for what they're going to do next, because it's getting really concerning with not only did we see the cutting of routes that connected to Korea's, but in lieu of this allegations surrounding the drones that were flying over the Pyongyang airspace, we have North Korea now seeing some activity involving the artillery units and the air defense. They're saying that they're going to send it over to the border areas directed towards Seoul is what they have said they were going to be doing. Minji, let's get the latest on the developments on that front.
Sure. So the situation along the Korean peninsula remains tense as North Korea has placed its artillery units near the border on high alert following claims that South Korean UAVs have violated its airspace. The North Korean military has reportedly ordered 8 artillery brigades to be combat ready, potentially preparing to retaliate if further UAV incursions are detected. North Korean authorities have strengthened surveillance, particularly around Pyongyang's air defense network, further increasing concerns of possible military confrontation. Now, in addition to the heightened military alert, recent reports indicate that North Korea is preparing to sever the few remaining inter-Korean land routes, specifically targeting the Gyeonggi and Donghae railway lines. According to South Korean military sources, North Korean troops have been observed making preparations to demolish sections of these roads. Barriers have already been set up and the demolition could take place imminently. South Korean officials are closely monitoring these activities and have taken steps to ensure the safety of military personnel and civilians. There is concern that North Korea may carry out what has been described as showcase demolitions or engage in smaller provocations to create distractions and increased leverage. Potential provocations could include artillery fire near the northern limit line or the NLL in the West Sea, a sensitive maritime boundary between the two Koreas.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think it was not too long ago that North Korea leader Kim Jong-un had gone off to inspect some new artillery unit or something like that, launchers, and they're capable of using whatever missiles and stuff like that. And there was threats about mobilizing him to the front lines. That didn't happen, right? That didn't happen. Now the threat is becoming real, right? This is what they're basically saying. We're going to be sending these artillery units to the front lines, the border areas, going to be pointed towards Seoul is what they're saying. But Minji, can you explain how likely it is that North Korea will carry out one of these smaller provocations, and what would be the immediate response from Seoul?
Certainly. So North Korea has a history of conducting smaller provocations when tensions rise, particularly along the NLL. And the South Korean military is maintaining a high level of readiness and has already issued directives to respond swiftly to any actions by the North. What this means is that if North Korea were to launch artillery fire or engage in any aggressive action, South Korea would likely respond immediately in self-defense with the goal of preventing further escalation. So this comes after North Korea announced on October 9th that it would fortify its defenses and fully cut off roads and railways connecting the two Koreas. North Korea also notified the United States via military communication channels, claiming that a large number of personnel and equipment would be mobilized for this effort, urging South Korea to prepare accordingly. Now, since late last year, North Korea has taken several actions to sever inter-Korean routes, including laying mines, removing street lights, dismantling railway tracks, and demolishing adjacent infrastructure. So South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff have been monitoring these developments for some good time and confirmed that the Gyeonggi and the Donghae lines were effectively cut off by August. So North Korea's latest moves are part of a broader strategy to sever ties with South Korea while ramping up its military presence along the border. These developments add to the growing instability in the region, with concerns mounting about potential military escalation. As North Korea continues to bolster its military readiness and cut off vital land routes, tensions between the two nations show no sign of easing. South Korean military officials remain vigilant, closely monitoring the situation in order to ensure the safety of the country.
So there was some interesting comments that came out. Right now, as you know, the national audit is taking place right until November. And I believe the National Assembly's Public Administration and Security Committee did an audit on Gyeonggi Province, which means that Gyeonggi Province Governor Kim Dong-yeon was questioned, asked, given certain questions and stuff like that. And this was one of the things that was mentioned, and I believe one of the DP lawmakers had said, well, given the fact that it seems like these provocations are stemming from the fact that the anti-Pyongyang leaflets seem to be the reasons behind this, what are you doing about it is what I believe the lawmaker, I forget who the lawmaker was, the DP lawmaker was, and which is why the Gyeonggi governor said he has ordered 5 areas in Gyeonggi region to be designated as danger zones. And the 5 areas are Yeoncheon, Pocheon, Paju, Gimpo, and oh my goodness, one more place. But it's down the border areas, right? And the reason why he said that he's ordered a designation of danger zone in those areas is because those are places where the South Korean activists are sending these anti-Pyongyang leaflets. And so by designating them as danger zones, you are not allowed to, civilians are not allowed to be there. If you are spotted at these danger zones, I believe it can lead to an arrest, imprisonment, and a fine of something like 10 million won, which is like $8,000, I believe. I don't know if that's going to stop them. And so this is, I believe that's what he's calling for right now. I don't think it hasn't been implemented yet, but there is still some sentiments, once again, that it is the anti-Pyongyang leaflets, maybe that's causing all of this. And it goes back to what the Constitutional Court had ordered and ruled in favor. Freedom of expression, and then the idea that it's not danger. It doesn't create any danger was one of the arguments that was being made. But you clearly see the escalation in tensions right now and the danger that it could pose to South Koreans because of the response from North Korea.
We've talked about the freedom of expression several times, but if it threatens the safety of Korean people, what's the point?
And so that's the
argument. The freedom of expression. Right?
Exactly, and that's the argument that's being made right now, right? Which is why a lot of people questioned what the Constitutional Court had ruled not too long ago. Which I mean, the activists they enjoy that stuff, right? Because there wasn't any direct danger that was being posed yet, but now we're seeing clear danger from all of this. In the meantime, the South Korean government and U.S. officials recently discussed ways to enhance cooperation on North Korean human rights issues. Back on October 10th, Cho Gu-rae, who is South Korea's chief nuclear negotiator, met with Julie Turner, the U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea Human Rights, who is visiting Seoul. Seong, tell us more.
Yes, according to a statement released by the Minister of Foreign Affairs on Saturday, Vice Minister for Strategy and Intelligence Cho Gu-rae emphasized that addressing North Korean human rights issues is a crucial foundation for achieving peace and unification on the Korean Peninsula. And South Korea and the United States have maintained a close cooperation on this matter, holding 2 rounds of consultations on North Korean human rights last November and again in April of this year. And during the meeting, Cho underscored the importance of holding North Korea accountable for human rights abuses to deter future violations. He urged both countries to explore legal and non-legal approaches for ensuring accountabilities. And Julie Turner agreed with Cho's proposals, and notably, she was accompanied by Beth Van Schek, the U.S. ambassador at large for global criminal justice, signaling that Washington intends to pursue meaningful strategies to address North Korea's human rights abuses. And Cho also expressed hope for the swift reauthorization of the U.S. North Korean Human Rights Act, calling for sustained attention and effort at the administrative level to achieve this goal. And as expected, North Korea reacted with hostility. A spokesperson from the North Foreign Ministry criticized the U.S. focus on human rights, calling it a pointless distraction. And the spokesperson argued that the more Washington emphasizes human rights, the clearer the failure of its denuclearization policy becomes. Furthermore, North Korea characterized the recent meeting and related efforts as direct threats to its sovereignty and national security, and it warned that it would respond decisively using its powerful strength to counter what it sees as hostile actions.
I do apologize for my coughing.
It's okay. Are you okay, Astray?
I didn't sneeze, Museum. I was coughing. But thank you very much for the bless you here. Let's continue on here. The EU has expressed concerns over recent reports suggesting that North Korea may be sending troops to Russia to support its war efforts in Ukraine. Now, the EU has signaled that if it's confirmed, this could lead to further sanctions against North Korea. Minji, let's get more on this.
Sure. So in Brussels, the EU officials addressed the growing speculation regarding North Korean military involvement in Russia's war in Ukraine. While no concrete evidence has been confirmed, the EU is closely monitoring the situation and is in communication with both Ukraine and the US to gather more information. If it is proven that North Korean troops have indeed been deployed to support Russia, then the EU is expected to take additional measures, including further sanctions on North Korea. This comes on the heels of reports suggesting that North Korea may have sent military engineers to the front lines to assist Russia in its use of North Korean-made ballistic missiles. Ukrainian media also reported that 6 North Korean officers were allegedly killed in a Ukrainian missile strike earlier this month, although these claims still remain unverified. Meanwhile, South Korea's defense ministry has indicated that given the strong military cooperation between North Korea and Russia, such deployments are a possibility. However, the Kremlin has denied these allegations, calling them false. Now, in addition, the EU is preparing to impose sanctions on individuals and entities involved in Iran's support for Russia's ballistic missile program. There are also concerns about Chinese companies supplying technology to Russia that could be used in the war, which could lead to more sanctions on China. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also weighed in, stating that North Korea may be providing not just weapons but also personnel to Russia, further intensifying concerns about the growing alliance between Russia and regimes like North Korea. He called for more military support from Ukraine's international partners, including long-range capabilities and sustained supplies. The EU and other international actors are expected to continue monitoring the situation closely as tensions remain high.
Got a message in from Crash Override over in Michigan who says, I feel like Putin really needs to just pack it in and deal with the mess he's created for everyone. Not sure why exactly he invaded in first place, but it's been a disaster. Well, I mean, there is a reason why he invaded in the first place. It was the idea that Ukraine looking to join NATO membership. And it was an agreement that NATO does not spread further than it has.
Right.
And the areas around like Ukraine was supposed to be kind of like the buffer zone. Belarus, Ukraine, those are the buffer zones away from the NATO member countries. And that was agreed upon. And so when Ukraine decided they wanted to join the membership, which basically joining NATO is very difficult. That's when they decided, okay, we are going to create our own buffer zone by taking more of the Ukrainian territory. And it started off with Crimea and so forth. But yeah, it's one of those things where Putin really thought that this war was going to end really, really quickly. I don't think he calculated the fact that there was going to be this international support for Ukraine and this like ongoing support. But it's gone so far that he just can't end it, right? Like, it would be disastrous for his political career when he's looking to be president for another 80 years. It's not going to happen. It's kind of the same way with what's going on right now in the Middle East with Benjamin Netanyahu, where it's blown out so big, he can't just go, oh, okay, no more of this, because his political career, his approval rating is not so good in the first place, and it would be disastrous for him. That's the reason why Putin cannot pack it in and just end this. But it's a time game, I think. He's playing the waiting game right now, I believe. Let's move on here. Come back to here in South Korea. For the first time ever, the number of female wage workers in South Korea has exceeded 10 million. Women now make up a record proportion of the workforce. The same trend is evident among female entrepreneurs. Seoul, good news for the female workforce. Tell us more about this.
Yes, according to Statistics Korea on Monday, the number of female wage workers reached approximately 10.15 million this year. And this marks the first time the figure has crossed the 10 million threshold since relevant data collection began in 1963. And this year's numbers are based on the January to August monthly average, and barring any major changes, the annual total is expected to exceed 10 million. And compared to 1963, the number of female wage workers has increased 17.7 times. And women now account for 46.1% of all wage workers, a historic high. And out of the 22 million total wage workers, nearly half are female now. And in comparison, the number of male wage workers increased from 1.81 million in 1963 to about 11.88 million this year, a 6.6-fold increase. But the growth rate for women has been 2.7 times that of men.
I mean, it's crazy because it used to be that, like, it's weird for women to go to work, right? They're supposed to stay at home. That's how it was. I mean, even when, like, in the 80s and early 90s, I mean, my mom stayed home. And
especially after they get married.
Right? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's not the case right now, which also they're saying because of the higher female workforce, that's also the reason why the weddings are delayed and childbirth is delayed too. But what are some of the key reasons behind this shift, Seoul?
Well, the rise can be attributed to the increased participation of women in the labor force over the years. As of last year, including both wage workers and other forms of employment, the total number of working women reached about 12.62 million, accounting for 44.2% of the employed population, a record high. Similarly, female entrepreneurs now make up 30.5% of all self-employed individuals, another milestone. But despite this positive positive developments, challenges still remain. One of the biggest issues is the persistent wage gap between men and women. According to the OECD, South Korea's gender wage gap stood at 31.2% in 2022, the largest among 36 member countries with available data. And this gap is 2.7 times the OECD average of 11.4%, placing South Korea at the top of the list, unfortunately. And experts point out that as South Korea faces rapid aging society and labor shortages, especially in small and medium-sized enterprises, the country needs to find ways to better integrate women into the workforce. But they caution that relying on women to fill labor gaps without addressing the wage gap could have long-term negative consequences. And I just want to add one more thing. These days, I see a lot of mothers becoming the primary breadwinner in their houses, and we see a lot of increasing number of single women living alone. So I think this matter should be addressed really importantly for the country's economic development in general, I think.
Yes, and
not just for the women themselves.
And you also have to really give it to women like Seoul who work and take care of their kids.
I know.
When I use work as an excuse not to take care of the kids, boo, men. Marilyn over in New Zealand says, yay for women, move over men. Well, I just want to say that as a man, I am a minority here at the broadcast station. There are very few men here.
Girl power. And Arirang.
And I don't know, the other guy's Key, and Key likes to wear pink. So, let's move on, talk about domestic politics and a significant political development. President Yoon Suk-yeol and People Power Party Chief Han Dong-un are finally scheduled for a one-on-one meeting next week. Meeting's going to take place after the October 16th by-elections and expected to focus on several pressing political issues, including matters surrounding First Lady Kim Gun-hee. Minji, tell us about this meeting.
Sure. So President Yoon Suk-yeol and PPP leader Han Dong-un will meet privately next week after the conclusion of the by-elections. This meeting follows a request from Han last month, which the president recently accepted after consulting with his aides. Both leaders are expected to discuss key political concerns. A major focus of the meeting will likely be addressing allegations surrounding First Lady Kim Gun-hee, which have been a point of contention raised by the opposition. Han Dong-un recently emphasized the need for reforms within the presidential office, suggesting that such changes are crucial to address public concerns over the First Lady's involvement in various issues. There are also concerns within the ruling party that Han's push for personnel changes may have influenced the timing of this meeting. Additionally, Han has expressed that the ongoing prosecution's investigation into the First Lady's alleged involvement in stock manipulation related to the Deutsche Motors must meet public expectations and adhere to legal principles. So this meeting between the president and the PPP leader comes at a critical time, with many people watching closely to see how discussions will shape the political landscape moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bold move of PPP chief, right, Han Dong-un, who I think openly basically said that there must be some sort of unofficial line. I think he called it the Kim Gun-hee line, right? That a number of top office officials were sort of named through Kim Gun-hee, and that there are a number of presidential office officials who are in direct or indirect communication with the First Lady, and she's apparently not supposed to do this because she's not a official or anything like that, right? She's not related. She doesn't have any duties. And for him to openly say this, it's pretty big, but he is also taking into consideration that the ruling PPP is bleeding heavily when it comes to the approval rating because of these allegations and the fact that the top office or the president is not addressing the issue. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's next week. What comes out of the meeting, we'll have to see. In the meantime, China's military has announced it will conduct large-scale drills on Monday and mobilize its army, Navy, Air Force, and Rocket Force when it appears to be a show of force surrounding Taiwan. In this exercise, seems to respond directly to Taiwan's recent National Day celebrations. Say, let's get more on this.
Sure. The spokesperson for China's Eastern Theater Command, Li Xi, announced through the command's social media account that the military would carry out the Sharp Sword 2024B joint exercise. The drills will be staged across key locations, including the Taiwan Strait and the northern, southern, and eastern regions around the island. China claims the drills are a necessary response to what it describes as provocative efforts by Taiwan's independence movement, and officials say the military actions are intended to protect China's national unity and sovereignty. Today's drills are intended as a warning and retaliation for President Lai Ching-te's remarks during his speech marking the 113th anniversary of the founding of Taiwan. President Lai reiterated the two-state theory there, asserting Taiwan's separate identity and denying China's claim to represent the island. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Mingpao reported, citing Taiwanese military officials, that China's Liaoning aircraft carrier has moved toward the western Pacific east of Taiwan. And in response to the drills, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense labeled China's actions irrational provocations and pledged to mobilize its forces to safeguard the nation's sovereignty and democracy.
In the meantime, at the recent East Asia Summit, attempts to adopt a joint statement were blocked by, you guessed it, China and Russia. The opposition from these two countries centered on key clauses addressing regional security issues such as the Korean Peninsula, South China Sea, and Ukraine, and this sparked accusations from the U.S. and other nations. Minji, let's get more details on the breakdown of this agreement.
Sure. So the East Asia Summit, which brought together 18 nations, including the U.S., South Korea, and Japan, failed to adopt a joint statement due to the opposition from China and Russia. The proposal, which was backed by ASEAN and the U.S. and its allies, aimed to address security concerns in several regions, including the Korean Peninsula, the South China Sea, and Ukraine. However, China and Russia rejected key clauses, arguing that the language had evolved beyond previous statements and escalated tensions in the region. A core issue that led to the disagreement between how the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea was referenced, particularly in relation to the South China Sea, where China claims almost all of the territory. So this issue has led to ongoing conflicts between China and Southeast Asian nations, and during the summit, the U.S. and its allies repeatedly voiced concerns over China's aggressive action in the region. Adding to the tensions, Russian and Chinese officials accused the U.S. and its partners of politicizing the statement, claiming that it was being used to stoke geopolitical conflicts. And on the other side, U.S. officials pointed to China and Russia's refusal to accept clauses addressing regional threats as the reason for the failure of the joint statement. So the failure to adopt a joint statement highlights the deep divisions among the participating nations and raises concerns about the ongoing regional disputes, particularly in the South China Sea.
Very quickly here, significant milestone for SpaceX. Successfully completed the 5th orbital test flight of the Starship rocket Sunday local time. The mission marks another key achievement towards Elon Musk's ambitious goal of lunar and Mars exploration. Say, round this out here.
Yes, will Elon Musk's dream of reaching Mars finally come true? The latest successful test flight of Starship adds yet another milestone in SpaceX's journey toward advancing the space industry. And this is the first time a rocket launched from Earth reached space and successfully performed a vertical landing upon its return. So with the latest achievement, we'll have to continue to keep a close tab on the future performance of SpaceX as it inches closer to making interplanetary travel a reality, which is Elon Musk's dream, one of the dreams.
I just have to say, if they do end up doing this, they really have to thank Sheldon Cooper. You guys know who Sheldon Cooper is?
Yes.
Sheldon Cooper raised this idea during young. I'm just citing young Sheldon. That's a good episode, by the way. But it is a milestone, definitely, and I would not be surprised maybe down a few decades later, people do end up going over to Mars. I'm not going to be one of them. Guys, thank you very much for your reports. Once again, my apologies from all the coughing that you guys had to deal with, but have a safe one, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys again.
Stay healthy, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.